Alright, in this video, we're going to be creating motion graphics, for video editing, for ads and so on with AI all automated. And you'll be able to get results just like this one. So as you can see, it's super high quality, and it's not like those text or image to video models that probably look a bit AI, look a bit grainy, or maybe the text renders out weird. No, because we're using HTML. We're not using image or video AI models. No, because this is how it works. In this case, I'm using Gemini 3 Pro because in my opinion, it's the best coding model out there. And HTML is basically code, so we're going to use it for this example. So I'm just telling it here to create a HTML animation of a mouse clicking a red button that says buy. And after a few seconds, it gave me this HTML. So once we render it, you can see that we have the animation all done and with the best quality as possible. So in a nutshell, this is basically just text to code. And that's exactly what we'll be automating with this workflow. So before we actually run this and demo it, let's just give it a quick rundown. So first off, you just submit a form with details like the description of the animation, the resolution, the duration, the reference image, and so on. After that, we just enhance that little prompt you provided with Claude. And then using Gemini 3 Pro, we start the actual HTML animation or the HTML coding. And once we have the HTML ready, we need to put it in a zip because the tool we're going to use to convert that HTML to an MP4 video is called HTML5 animation to GIF, and it requires the HTML to be in a zip file. So that's why we do that. So here we first just upload the HTML to their servers, and it actually converts it to a video. And once we have the video, then we just download it. So yes, there's a lot of potential here, but now let's actually run this thing. So let's execute workflow. And here we first have to give a prompt or a description. So in this case, I'm telling it to create an animation of 3 stages. First one being a phone with a buy button, second one being a mouse clicking that buy button, and third one being a gift coming out of the phone. And as you can probably tell, this would be for an e-com site, so I'm also telling it that. And then you just have to select the style. In my case, I want to go with clean and corporate. And for the video resolution, I want it horizontal, so 1920 by 1080. For the duration, I want it as 10 seconds. And for the example or reference image, which I highly recommend you to use, I'm going to use this one that I found on Google, which represents well my prompt. So let's just upload that here. And then let's just click on submit. And as you can see, the workflow is running in the background. And boom, after a couple of seconds, we now have the result, which is exactly what we wanted with inspiration from the reference image. And it turned out very nice. So now let's actually go ahead and see how I did all of this. But before that, I quickly want to mention our school community called No Code AI Automators, because if you want access to this downloadable template, then here is where you can actually get it. And here is also where you can access all of the templates and automations that I built on my YouTube channel. So you can just select the one you want, scroll down, download the blueprint, and import it directly to your N8N. Apart from that, we also have extra classes for complete beginners if you're really interested in this space. So if you like N8N and AI, then I highly recommend you to join. Right now we have a limited offer until 100 members, so feel free to check it out and the link will be in the description. Okay, but anyways, now let's actually get started. And as a first step, you of course need to have N8N installed. And the method that I use and recommend is with Hostinger, especially with this KVM2 package if you're really into the space and you want to create workflows like the ones I do on my channel, and also install other tools inside your VPS as well. Because yes, this is a VPS plan and N8N will be hosted inside it. So you can just go ahead and choose plan. Then here you can select your period. The higher you go, the cheaper it will be. After that, you can select an operating system. In this case, you can select the N8N plus 100 extra workflows. And then for the checkout, you can select have a coupon code and enter Ricardo, which is my coupon code, which will give you a 10% discount. So as you can see, we have a 10% discount now. And this also means that yes, this is an affiliate, which means that I may get a commission if you purchase with my link. So I would highly appreciate that to support the channel. But once you continue and accept the purchase, you'll do a quick setup that won't take more than 5 minutes. And then boom, you'll have your unique access to N8N. So now that you have it, then let's start with a tutorial. So first off, the trigger, in this case, we have the form submission. Of course, this trigger would depend on what you're using this for, but in this case, it'll be a form. And the important details we need to have here is the prompt, the style, the video resolution, in this case, the width, the height, the duration, and as optional an example image. So once you have that, then you'll get the example image right here, and all of the parameters that we have filled from the demo will also appear here. So these bits are important because we'll use them later on. But after that, we actually need to enhance the animation prompt because the one that we gave it was way too short. And in this case, we're separating it into two. The first one being with a reference image and the second one being without one. And to check if your trigger had a reference image, then we can just use this if else node. So here you can just grab the example image field into the condition. And then for this checker, you can just change it to object and exists. So this is checking whether or not this reference image exists. And in this case it did, so it went through this true branch into this prompt. And for this prompt, or actually meta prompt, we're using Claude Sonnet 4.5. And here I'm basically just telling it what it'll receive, so the duration, the resolution, the reference image, and so on. And then some instructions and recommendations on how to create the HTML. And I know that this prompt is pretty long, but it has worked great for me. So if you also want a detailed prompt like this one, you can just go to the Claude in the website, tell it that you want a meta prompt for a HTML animation, and it'll give you something very similar. After that, you can just tweak it to your requirements, and that'll be more than enough. So once you have it, you can just put it here. And then in this case, since this is with a reference image, you can enable this send attachments or add attachments. Here for the type, just change it to binary file. And then for the attachment input data name, you can just put it the same as it was. So in this case, it's called example image, and that's what we put here. Then after that, for options, you can just add an option, specifically this one that's called the maximum number of tokens, and change it to something high like 15 or 20,000. Because like I mentioned, this prompt is big and the result will also be big. And if you don't put this in, then it may just cut the output or it won't even let it finish. So this is very important. But then for this other prompt, it's basically the same thing. But in this case, we don't have this add attachment because we're not using a reference image. But the only difference is that we're telling it to be a little bit more creative since it won't have anything to reference. But anyways, once you have that meta prompt, then we can finally create the HTML. So here we're just using a Gemini 3 Pro model. And here we're just pasting the prompt that Claude created. So you can just go ahead and drag this text expression right here. And then again, for the options, you can enable maximum number of tokens and set it to a big number like 30,000 or 25,000. So it doesn't cut your HTML output abruptly. And then once you run it, as you can see, we will have the whole HTML ready to go. But there's a few things we need to tweak. For example, these characters at the start and these ones at the end. So for this, we're just going to use a code node to extract the HTML or to basically just delete those parts. And in this case, I'm using this JavaScript code. And I basically just made this with ChatGPT. I just told it to create code for n8n to delete these parts from a HTML, and it gave me this, and it works perfectly. So once you run this, then you would finally be able to see that this is the correct HTML that will actually render correctly. So then once we have the HTML, then we actually need to format it into a zip file. And to do that, we first have to transform it to binary. So again, I'm just using a code node to do that. Again, I made it with ChatGPT. I just told it, hey, I need to change this HTML into a binary file in n8n, and it gave me this. And boom, as you can see, now we have the HTML in a binary format. So if we actually download this, you'll be able to see that it's actually in .html. So that's exactly what we want. And then to transform that into a zip file, we can use this compression node. So for operation, just set it to compress. For the input, set it as data because that was our HTML file. Then for the output format, just select zip. And then in this case, we don't want to change the name. I'm just going to name it data, so you can just put this as data. So then once you execute it, you'll have your zip file ready to go. And just to prove that, I'm going to download this file. And as you can see, it is a .zip. So far, so good. And now we need to convert that HTML to a video. And here we're going to use this API called HTML5 animation to GIF, which by the way is free. So what this will do is it'll basically render out the HTML in a browser and record that browser and basically put it as an MP4. So that's exactly what we want. So then here to actually get our API key, then we can just go to their website, which is called theirname.com. Then go in the top right where it says API. Then scroll down a bit and select obtain an API key and client ID. And then it'll tell you to create an account, and boom, that's it. As you can see, now we have the API key and our client ID. You can just create a HTTP request node, set the method as post, set the URL as this one, enable sends body, body content type as form data. Then for the parameter type, just set it as binary file. For the name, just put it as file. And for the input data field name, put it as data, or however you named your zip file. Because here we're going to upload the zip file to their servers, which is the first step. So then once you run this, it'll just say success. And now your file is in their server, so that's perfect. And then the next step is to convert that HTML to a video. And to do that, we're going to use another HTTP request node. So again, set the method as post, set the URL as this one, so it's this one right here. Then enable send body, set body content type as form data. Then for the first parameter, it'll be form data. The name will be client ID and the value would be whatever client ID you have. Then for the second parameter, again, we're going to use the form data type. Then for the name, just put in API key, and for the value, put in your actual API key. So those two parameters would basically be the whole authentication. And then the rest of these parameters will just be the specification. So first off, we have the creative ID or the video ID that we have just uploaded. So here you can just drag it from our past node, which is data. So just drag that in. And in this case, as you can see, the JSON isn't formatted correctly. I don't know why. Everything is just in this text or string. So to actually extract just this creative ID value, you have to put in this expression right here. And as you can see, it just gets the actual value of the ID, not the whole thing. But anyways, now for the rest of the parameters, we have the width and the height. So for both of these, we actually have to get it from this form submission node. So the video width goes here, the video height goes here. And then again, for the duration, you can just get it from this node. So it's right here and just drag that in. And in this case, as you can see, I'm adding 5 extra seconds. And why is this? Because if you don't add a couple of extra seconds, then the animation may just end abruptly without finishing. So it's always a good idea to put in a few extra seconds to give it some time. But then after that, we just put the FPS, which is how many frames per second it would record, and in this case I'm putting it at 60, so it looks smooth and nice. And then for the bitrate value, I'm just putting it as 8 to get the best quality that the free plan offers, because yes, this is free, and if you want more high quality or to remove that actual watermark, then you do have to purchase their paid plans. But anyhow, once you have this in, then you can just run and you'll simply get a success message, which means that your conversion has started. So now that it's initialized, then it's our responsibility to check if it's finished, and if it is finished, then to actually download it. So to get the status, here we're using another HTTP request. In this case, the method is as get, the URL is this one. And for the body, we're again using form data, again the creative ID, and now we also have the media ID, and this field comes from our convert HTML to video node, so you can just drag that in. And just like before, all of these values are inside one piece of text, so you do need to have this expression format just to extract this media ID, which is what we did here, and it's working. So boom, that's good. And then as a last parameter, you need to put in the name as file extension or file ext, and the value as mp4, because it'll be a video. And then boom, once you run this, then for the status, it'll say success, but then it'll also mention the job status. So this job status can be 0%, 50%, and so on. And in this case, it says pending because this is from our demo, and this node ran 0.001 seconds after this past node. So it's basically at 0% in this first run. But then here, since we're checking this get status every 15 seconds, then as you can see, for example, for the second run, it was at 13%. Then for the third run, it was at 25, and so on until it finishes. And if you're wondering how to do this polling or continuous checking, then it's pretty simple. It's basically called API polling. So after your get status node, you just need to put in if node, and the condition here will be if this job status is set as done. Done basically means that it's 100% and that it's finished. So again, drag this expression right here, and since like before everything is in a single text line, you have to use this format to extract just this value. So that's what we did here. And then for this condition, you can just set it to string and is equal to, and then here just put in done. So if done equals done, then that's true. And if this is any other value like 10% or 20%, then that's not equal to done. So this will be false. So boom, that's this if node. And as you can see, if this is true, so if it is done, then it'll go to this other node to download the video. And if it's not, then it'll go to this wait node that we have set it as 15 seconds. And once 15 seconds passes, it'll just go to this get status again and run it again to see if it's done or not. So it'll do this loop. In this case, it did this loop 5 times. And then when it is, we just use this HTTP request with the get method. And for the URL, we actually put in the video URL that it provided. So in this case, it's here. So you can just drag and drop all of this into the URL and then set it as the correct format like you see here to just extract the URL. And boom, once this executes, then it'll download as a binary and it'll be right here. So boom, and now you would be able to have your complete and finished motion graphics video animation ready to use for your video edits, for your ads, for your explainer videos, for anything you want. And all for just a couple of cents, because Claude, every run costs around this amount, and for Gemini, every run costs this amount. But yeah, this workflow provides really good results and it'll just get better as long as the AI advances. So yeah, remember that if you want access to this downloadable template, then it'll be available in our school community. Right now we have a limited offer until 100 members, so check it out. The link will be in the description. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. If you found this video helpful, then be sure to hit the like button. And if these type of workflows are really interesting to you, then check out my past videos, which are very similar. If you want more videos like this one, subscribe and hit the bell. That'll be it. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video.